I would like to thank you for joining us today for our recommended training on men's health and male involvement. I'm Ira Farley, and I will be your host during this session. For technical support, Kamisha Busby will be assisting. A couple of reminders as we begin. First, the session is being recorded, so for better audio quality, please remember to mute your microphones on your computers or phone when you're not speaking. There are no handouts for this presentation today. During the session, feel free to ask questions at the discretion of the presenter. At that time, if you can unmute your microphones. If this is not an option, we have a chat feature within the meeting application. Feel free to use this option during each presentation as questions arise. Each presenter will allocate time during the presentation to address those. We have two main speakers, and sandwiched between the speakers, we will have men from the health departments share. There's no time given for these small presentations because each male will have 4 minutes to share. So we're talking about the two main presentations. They'll allocate time for you to ask questions. Also, as a reminder, attendees are to complete the verification of attendance by way of the individual sign-in form. The link to access the form will be placed in the chat. This enables the district nurse managers to easily verify your attendance for this recommended training. In celebration of Father's Day, the Maternal Child Health Service area has developed a toolkit that gives tips for fathers on how you can bond with your newborn baby. Different ways to hold your baby, changing a diaper, and how to support the baby's mother. To introduce this toolkit is James Craig. He is the Public Health Social Work Coordinator for the OSDH. Thank you for joining us, James.
Good morning, Ira.
Good morning.
We get started. I'll share my screen. Okay, can everybody see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. Once I go into this view, I can't see the chat, so I wasn't sure. So let me start by talking about some background information. In the maternal and child health service, I think a lot of people, of course, think of us as being focused on mothers and children, which we are, but it is a family. It is a family focus. So fathers, of course, fall into that group as well. So I think one of the things that's always important to talk about is why do fathers matter? Before I get into the toolkit itself, why do fathers matter for public health? And here are some statistics that sort of speak to that. One of the things that I think is always really interesting to look at is when you look at the amount of children who grow up with their biological fathers in the home, they actually have reduced risk of illness and lower rate of infant mortality relative to single parent households. There's each one of these statistics I do have cited here. Girls who have lower quality paternal investment do tend to have more risky sexual behaviors than other peers who don't have present fathers. So that's also an interesting stat here. And here in the last point on this slide, any of the children, whether this is adolescents, males or females, that have mediating influence with fathers do better academically, regardless of their environment. Women pregnant without fatherhood involvement have often higher rates of low birth weight, very low birth weight, preterm, and small gestational ages. When they're more involved, we have decreased mental health symptomology, and more positive involvement is inversely associated with childhood problems over time. So here are all some great reasons that we need fathers involved. Women here in this slide, women who smoked at conception, their partners who are involved reduce consumption of cigarettes. And of course, we know that tobacco use is a huge risk factor when it comes to any sudden unexplained infant deaths. So that's a great point to make here. Of course, reducing infant mortality is a key thing that we're looking to do in maternal and child health service. This last point here, greater male involvement decreases likelihood that we have children engaged, or excuse me, increases the likelihood, I said that backwards, in behaviors such as exclusive breastfeeding, child immunization, and increases testing and treatment of STIs. So, lower obesity rates, and in multiple domains, we have protective factors for children. So, I mean, really, any way you slice it, the more involvement you have of a positive influence of fathers. Of course, we know that we want it to be positive interactions every time, but the more of those that we do have, the better off the mother typically will do in her pregnancy, and the better off the children do. So, just real quick, I'll go over some reasons why that might not
Mhm.
happen. Poor financial stability, social pressure is a little less. I think this is um, less common now, but it's traditionally been less on men. And the negative relationship with the child's mother, that's one of the primary ones, of course. You know, I always say, even if you're no longer in a relationship romantically with the mother, you always want to engage with the father as a co-parent, unless there is some sort of course, um, trauma or abuse that's taken place. That, of course, is a different story. Lacking community support, that does often happen here. Substance abuse, incarceration. So those are the main reasons why we don't see this happening. Now, I don't have super local stats on this.
James, your mic is muted.
So, Kamisha, this whole time, nobody's heard me talk.
No,
No.
we've heard you. It just says with local stats. That's where you
Oh,
stopped.
oh, weird. I didn't push any buttons. I don't know what happened. Oh, no. So the comment I was making is just that I don't have very local statistics, and that's one thing I wish we had that we don't is greater local data collection of fathers. But what this slide talks about, this is from the Pew Research Center, is what are the benefits here of having, you know, whether you're living apart from your child or living with the child, the percentage of you know, of course, it's easier if you're living with the child, but the percentage of fathers who are engaged in these activities obviously is higher if you're living with them. But we want obviously those rates to increase on every level. Okay, let's get into the actual toolkit. So we have worked on this for quite a while. I'm really proud of it. I think it's one of those things, you know, we have an awful lot of information that is targeted to moms, and when we should have, but we just don't have that much targeted to dads. And so I wanted to make an effort to do that, specifically reach out to dads, speak to them about some of the things that, frankly, you just don't know about when you're first having a new baby. You know, there's no manual on this, right? There's plenty of books written about it, but when you come out of that hospital and they hand you that baby, you know, I remember as a dad of four kids being overwhelmed. Certainly the first time, and every time it's a little overwhelming to feel like, wow, I've got this new baby, and um, at the first time especially, it's just what am I supposed to do, right? So thinking about how you can bond with the baby, there's actually multiple pages on this. And I'm not going to go through and read every one of these, but I think just to hit on some of these things here, whenever you have an opportunity to meet up with other dads in the area, if you've got a friend or a neighbor who's just had a baby, connect with them, right? Go out for coffee, go watch a ball game, do things together, build those connections. You know, one thing that I know is pretty consistently true across the board is that men need to support each other and don't always do the best job of that. Statistically, women do have better and stronger social supports than men do. We tend to isolate a little more than moms, and I think we definitely need to work on making sure that we're more connected with each other. So one of the things you'll notice on this bottom part of the second page is where it talks about play. Over and over, one thing that research does tell us is that that is a key role for dads, right? So we are great at play. And play sounds maybe silly, maybe not as important, but that's a very important thing that fathers bring to the table. That's unique to dads, you know. When you look at both obviously we have single dads, we have single moms that do a fantastic job as parents, and I'm not taking anything away from either of those. But there are specific things, strengths that dads bring to the table, and one of those is play. So, wrestling with our kids, um, tickling our kids, throwing them up in the air, spinning them around. That's the kind of stuff that primarily dads do, that often moms don't as much do. And so, that is a really great way to bond with our kiddos. I don't know how many times I bounced my kids, and played airplane with them. It's great things to do. Okay. So moving on to these pages here, these are really, I think, great illustrations of ways to hold the baby that, again, at least when I was just starting out and having my first son, I just didn't know, what are the different options? How do you do this? So I love that we've got illustration on each one of these that kind of helps you visualize how you can hold the baby different ways. Um, you know, Girls, we do a good job, I think, sometimes, and sometimes maybe focus too much on, they're socialized to be caregivers. And I know a lot of the female friends I had when they were having their babies, it just seemed like they knew what to do because they pretended with dolls, right, when they were little girls. And as guys, it's just not something you do often. And so it just did not come as natural to me to just know how to do this stuff. So again, giving dads a resource to look at and be, oh, okay, this is the ways I can do this. And it sounds silly. I know. I remember when I first had, like I said, I've got four now, but my first baby, um, changing the diaper was intimidating to me. I really did not know. Okay, well, I get the basic mechanics here, but right, but what's the best way to do this? And of course, making sure that you talk about this before you have the baby, right? So I think that's one of the main things is, if we can get this information in the hands of new dads before it actually is time to do this stuff, even better. So obviously, dads, one thing we can't do is breastfeed, but we can support moms who are. We know breastfeeding is a great thing to do for many, many reasons. Safe sleep is another focus area of mine. And breastfeeding reduces the risk of infant sleep death by 50%. So, very supportive of breastfeeding. But again, we can't do that. So, how do we help moms who are? And here's some tips in terms of making sure that you're holding the baby properly, how long. In other words, most cases, if you're bottle feeding, let's say mom is at work, mom is resting, and you're there feeding the baby, just making sure that you're looking at the time, right? So 10, 20 minutes at a time. You don't want to overfill them. Making sure that you take pauses when you're bottle feeding a breastfed baby. Um, and I think one of the things that I didn't know, especially when I first started, was it just seemed like, well, I've got this milk in this bottle. They need to drink it all, right? No. I mean, they really just want to look at feeding cues, and making sure that you're feeding, until that baby is done, and not just making sure, well, we've got milk, we just need to keep feeding. So again, this is stuff I didn't know, and I think it's really great to have these as resources for new dads. One of the main things, of course, when it comes to breastfeeding, is the fact that just like, if you were to use formula, in either case, if you've got it frozen, and or if you're mixing it right, with breast milk, you've got to be able to test it. You can't make it too hot. You don't want to burn your baby. So making sure that, I think maybe you've seen this in movies, but again, something I was used to didn't was something that I knew to do. We sort of give you a step-by-step way for how you want to heat that and get it back into the baby whenever we've frozen breast milk. One of the other things too, I'll highlight on this slide is talking about doing skin to skin contact, at the hospital and at home too. This is one of those things that has changed from when I first had 15 years ago. First baby I had, and my daughter is 3 years old, so I've got a pretty good span. And 15 years ago, dads were not invited in to do skin-to-skin contact, and that's changed now. It's definitely something that they will recommend. And that's because whenever you do that, I mean, several reasons, but the two that I'm going to mention are your increase in dopamine and oxytocin, which is the bonding chemical, right, in our brain, really kicks in and it helps you with bonding with that new baby. And also helps the baby feel more connected and bonded with you. So doing those things, the other thing about skin to skin that's great, and again, this is mom and dad, is that it will be beneficial. It's also studies that show it's beneficial to reduce SIDS risk. And again, anything we can do to reduce that risk, we want to do. Okay, the good news is there's a little more information we're going to squeeze in there that isn't quite ready yet, but that is where we stand now. You can get this toolkit on the website right now at our website. Just search fatherhood, and it's under men's health, the men's health tab. And like I say, you can download it today. What questions does everyone have?
James, there are no questions. The only question they did have is where can they order them? But you answered that as far as if they want to print off their own version, but there will be some distribution of some hard copies that's in production.
Right. We don't have them printed yet, and that's because there's two more pages that we're working to squeeze in here, and I wanted to wait until we had that done before we printed hard copies. But if you want to print it today, you can on your own. Just go to the website and download it, and you're free to do that. But I'm hoping here in a couple more weeks we'll have a little more information in there before we print it.
James, I have
Um,
a
uh, um,
Go.
just add real quick, Ira. The website to get to that toolkit is in the chat. So it's www.oklahoma.gov/ I'm sorry, health/men. I'll retype it because I left out the health part. But it will be in the chat, so you all will have that.
Okay. Thanks everybody for your time. Stop sharing
James, I have a
this.
question.
Okay.
Could you maybe talk a moment just about the newsletter, father newsletter?
Sure. So one of the things I didn't mention earlier, and what I was referring to, is over the past couple of years, and it's not as consistent as it should be, which is my fault. But I've worked to put out a newsletter that's also on the website, same location, that talks about, again, new tips for new dads, upcoming events that are going on throughout the state, not necessarily Oklahoma City. Some of these are in Tulsa, some are in Muskogee, some are Veneta, wherever. And those have typically been quarterly, but lately it's been a little bit less regular. So I need to work on that. But that's where a lot of this information in terms of the tips in the toolkit have come from. We actually culled those from the newsletter and sort of put them all together in one place.
So James, is it possible that you could just link one of them in the chat so then people can just have that visual right there available for them?
Sure. Pull it up for you.
Okay, well, James, thank you for putting together a practical, informative toolkit for the fathers, and it's a big thing for new dads afraid to break the baby, so to speak. So, thank you for your contribution.
Certainly.
During Men's Health Month, Maternal Child Health also wants to celebrate with and thank all males who work in the county health departments and contract agencies across the state. Male staff work directly and indirectly with male clients at health departments, on mobile health units, and out in our communities throughout the state. Male staff from across Oklahoma, 8 male staff from across Oklahoma will share for about 4 minutes each in this next section of our program for today. Alfred, Charles, Daniel, Jeremy, Matthew, Sean, Timothy, and William are all representative of male staff with their various job titles and unique perspectives on serving males in the community who access health care in the clinical setting. They serve males physically, socially, and emotionally with care and compassion. Our colleagues will share their experiences, both serving and observing males, and insights to better reach their felt needs. And I'm going to put a snip of the men that are speaking. I'm going to post it right now so that you can have that in the feed. And this is the order that they will be presenting in. And what I'd like to do now is to introduce our first presenter, who is Alfred Van Fossen. He's from Custer County Health Department. He has a mental health administration Tech 3. And during the presentations, what I'd like you to, for you that are participating, if you gain insights or you have an insight you want to share that on the topic that each presenter is talking on, I'm going to compile this information and distribute it to the health departments, because reaching males is a very important factor, and it's not easy to reach the male community. And that's the reason why I'm having this session, so that we can learn what's happening from out in the health departments, from the observations from the men. So please feel free to put your comments in the section. Alfred, it's your turn now. Okay, Alfred is not on now, so I'm going to move to the next one. I'm going to for each one, I'm just copying and pasting their names in the chat box. So we'll move forward with Charles Roach. He's from Woodward County Health Department, and he's an administrative assistant 2. And recently I was visiting Woodward County Health Department, and we had a chance to talk. And as I learned from Charles, I felt, wow, this would be an opportunity, having met someone in person, to invite to share. So Charles, if you're available, would you please share with our participants?
Hey, good morning, Ira. Everyone, how are you guys doing today?
We're good.
Good. So
Can you turn your camera on if possible?
show that it is on.
You may have the cap on.
Oh, why? Let me try to unplug it and plug it back in.
I would say, do you have your cap on where it doesn't show you your privacy settings at the top of the computer?
I think so.
And if you have a Microsoft computer, sometimes they have a little slide piece that's right over the camera.
It's
Okay.
Problem before.
We do have your photo up, so that's good. I'd say let's go ahead and go with that, Charles.
Okay, yeah. Once again, good morning, everybody. Just wanted to say real quick, bravo on the toolkit for new dads. I think that was is an awesome supportive tool for men entering fatherhood. That's a great step for us. So I visited with Ira a few weeks ago, and we kind of talked about some of the stuff that we see here in the health department. And working as an administrative assistant gives me an opportunity to see directly and kind of experience interactions with males and young fathers that come into the health department. And typically we see that we get a lot of direct interaction through males coming in for vaccinations, STI testing, sooner care applications, and WIC encounters, and most generally, where the clinical side touches them directly is more along the STI testing and vaccinations. We see a little bit less involvement as far as Sonicare and WIC goes. The clients will come in with their families and their wives, and it just seems like whenever they come in at that role with the wife and their kids for a WIC appointment, or even for a family planning appointment or something like that, the the guys kind of take a backseat role, if you will, to the whole process. A lot of times they don't seem as involved as the moms are, and that's kind of harsh a little bit for the process, not to get to see their involvement in the family aspect of why they're coming to the health departments, and to kind of be a little bit more involved in those processes, in the family planning processes specifically, and even more so, or even the same amount in the WIC processes. Whenever we watch young men come into the health department, typically you see them, their demeanor is more like, hey, they're to the point and they're down to business. They want to come in, they want to get the service that they're here for, and then they want to leave. And that's just kind of the mentality that we see them come through the health department as. And, I think if we as an organization kind of take time to interact with them and maybe kind of break down that barrier a little bit, that need to just get the job done and go on, if we can sit there and kind of visit with them a little bit, break down that barrier, build a relationship with them a little bit, it would help them become more involved in the processes, the family planning processes, the WIC processes, things that are going to be important in them establishing and building their family relationships. Where's I going now? Importance of having male staff in various county health departments. I think it is a great opportunity to kind of break down that barrier even a little bit more. Whenever you kind of watch whenever a young man or male comes into the health department and they're kind of a little bit standoffish or not really sure exactly how to interact or what they're really there for, especially when they come in those more indirect roles, like whenever they come for family planning or they come for WIC. I think they feel like they're a little bit out of place. And so whenever they see another male in the health department and they get an opportunity to interact with that male and they say, oh, okay, this is a little different than what I was originally expecting. This is, I was able to talk to somebody that I can relate to and maybe they can relate to me. And it makes it easier, as myself, a father of four, being down that road before, to kind of get them excited about, the family planning process, get them excited about the new child that's on the way, kind of relating to them how important it is to provide nutrition and support for their spouse and their children that are coming along. All that's vitally important to these young men that are coming into the health department these days.
Charles,
Oh yes.
I need to interrupt. We need to move on to the next presenters.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
make a closing comment though. That would be good.
Okay, yeah. Just to finish up real quick, I've experienced some of the uneasiness, and I think that it's very important for these young men, like I said, just to reiterate, these young men to be more involved and have that barrier broke down, feel a little more comfortable when they come into our health department. I
Thank you,
appreciate you guys. Thank you for allowing me to talk.
thank you too, Charles. Our next presenter is Daniel Ortiz. He's at the Sequoia County Health Department as an epidemiologist. Daniel, thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Ira. Appreciate the opportunity to talk. So there were just, because I'm kind of more on the data side, I don't really interface with patients directly or clients directly. A lot of the males I interact with are community partnerships and whatnot. But there were a few points that I wanted to touch on that I think are relevant to this discussion. First kind of topic that I wanted to discuss was, how we can make males feel more comfortable within the health department. And I think kind of a good place to start with that is educating the OSDH staff, all staff, about what programs, what services are relevant and applicable to males. I think a lot of staff, we don't know everything that's relevant to males, and I think that uncertainty kind of spills over, probably more subconsciously, into how we interact with males. So I think that's a great place to start, would be educating all staff within the agency, and then going and educating community members secondarily. The other topic that I wanted to kind of touch on was just kind of recruitment efforts for male clients and male patients to the health department. And I think I had a kind of a few different thoughts on that. One was, I was really impressed with the toolkit that James Craig just presented to us. That was really great. And essentially kind of translating that toolkit into a program. I mean, from what I see, that toolkit is essentially kind of like a C1 program for males. And I think that would be maybe an opportunity to explore kind of having like an equivalent of the C1 program for men. So that's one thing. Another thing, I was kind of reading up on the topic of kind of male recruitment efforts to health services, and they found that competition is kind of something that males kind of respond to. And so maybe like kind of finding different ways to incorporate competition into kind of programs. We kind of heard about a walking group in, I think it was Rogers County. And so what about like a walking group that kind of pits one male walking group, or male and female, whatever, versus a different district, and kind of see who can get the most steps in. So, that's perhaps another idea. Last two ideas, and I'm unsure of the feasibility of these, but these were kind of recruitment efforts that were used during COVID to get people to get vaccinations. One is kind of like handing out gas cards. If there's one thing I know about men, we hate paying for gas. So if maybe that's something we can look into. I don't know if that's the legality of it, but just kind of maybe like a gas card giveaway. And then lastly, I'll wrap it up with this idea, is just kind of a discount on fishing and hunting licenses. Maybe like a lottery or something like that. That may be something that's attractive towards males as well. So I will wrap up with those thoughts, and thank you again for your attention, and please feel free to reach out with any questions.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for, as it was posted, incentives, being creative to be able to tap into the community, because people like freebies. People are motivated with incentives. Our next presenter, I'm going to post his name there, is Jeremy Colbert. He's in Muskogee at the County Health Department there, and he is a health equity specialist. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for joining us.
Yeah,
How are you guys doing
hey,
today?
yeah,
Really
Darren.
excited to be here. Can you hear me just fine?
Yes.
I thought I had heard someone else speaking. Um,
That was
Excited to
me
be here.
saying, hey, happy to see you. Glad to see you. That was me.
Hey, Marquise, how are you? Really excited to be here today. Wanted to give two perspectives. One, my first perspective as far as my me being a client of the health department, and also me being employee of the health department. So I have two different perspectives. With my first child, we were able to take advantage of WIC. That was one of the services that we needed based on our situation. When I had my first kid, the big thing is I wanted to provide for my family. And when you think of that as a man, that's something that we really take pride in. So when we come in and actually get in a situation where we need help, I know I was going to school and I was waiting tables at night trying to provide for my family. And I really wanted to provide an opportunity for my wife to stay home and be able to take care of the child. And we did need WIC, and she knew that. She reached out to the health department here, not in this particular county, but she reached out to the health department and got signed up for WIC. And it was a service that I knew we needed, and I was excited that we were taking advantage of it. But I was a little bit too prideful to come in because, one, we're receiving help, and men sometimes do not like to ask for help. So for me, in that particular situation, it took a long time for her to chip away at me coming into the health department and participating in one of those appointments. And when I finally did muster up enough courage to come in there, we kind of went through the process, and she did all the paperwork to kind of go back and all that good stuff. And she told me a little bit about the program, and we kind of walked through the appointment. And I kind of felt like just the elephant in the room, so to speak. I was just there, not much engagement. I don't even know if I was even asked my name. I was just a part of the appointment, and I never really was a part of the actual appointment. So for me, I was like, I'm never, ever going back because, hey, it took a lot of energy to muster up to even get to go to an appointment. But then the whole, I didn't feel like I was even there for anything. No questions were asked to me. Like, it was just, for me, it was not a good experience for me. So it scared me away from coming back to the health department. Let's kind of flip back to where I am now. And that's not a testament to anyone saying that someone did anything wrong. I just think there's different ways that we can look at how we offer these programs, keeping that type of experience in mind. And like I said, it may have changed over time where that may be a more inclusive appointment, but at that time, it was very hard for me to try to muster up the energy. But now I have the opportunity to kind of change some of that. I'm a health equity specialist. My majority of my job is overseeing our community health workers. Also have an opportunity to work with our mobile units. So with that, it gives me a unique opportunity to basically connect with our community. I'm so excited at the fact that the health department has changed over to our perspective of bringing our amazing services to the community, out in the community on their own times. And if you think of a man's, I can't speak for all men, but if you think of a man's perspective, a lot of times they have this thought that they don't have time to do certain things. So they prioritize what is important to them. And a lot of times our health and basically learning more about our health is kind of put on the back burner. So now we have an opportunity to actually get in their way. What I mean by that is we're going to them on their times, what they're doing in the community, where they're actually getting together. Those are the big things that are making that change to where we're having some bigger interactions with them and more effective interactions. If I was to look back at that appointment, I would say look at ways to allow that person to be heard. One of the basic things as a human nature is I want people to see me. I want you to know that I'm here. I want you to know that I'm available. I want you to know that I'm important. So creating that space for that person to express themselves, talk about their experience, I think is very important. And I imagine if I had an opportunity at that appointment again, if I was able to kind of talk a little bit about my experience with my child at that time, I think it would have gave me some type of ownership with the program, ownership with what was going forward, kind of as far as some of the outcomes and understanding the education piece and all that good stuff, but I really didn't have much ownership. It was the baby's program and mom's program. It wasn't my program. It never was. And I hate to look back at it and say that because I'm on the back end of that and can kind of help some of those changes. But I think it's important to point out that that is a thought that men do have. But we've seen some successes. Like I said, with our community health worker, we're starting to see more opportunities to hear their voice. So in closing, I would say be creative with your approach to men. Give them a space to talk about what they may be feeling or their experiences, and also get connected with them on their time. So I appreciate you guys for your time, and I love the work that you're doing, Ira. Let's continue this conversation, and I would love to contribute in any way that I can.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. And for each of you men, you bring such a different perspective and an angle that not only men, if the ladies had a chance to share, everyone has a perspective. But just thank you. We're now going to turn to our next presenter. And our next presenter is Matthew Adams. And I originally had Matthew listed as a clinician on the mobile health clinic for unit for Region 3, but he is now the district nurse manager. Matthew, thank you for joining us, and this is your time. We can't hear you. Your mic's off.
Apologize about that. Sorry. I'm actually mobile today. Believe it or not, I'm actually on one of our mobile vans.
Awesome.
An all-staff meeting today here in Pawnee County. So I took some time out today to join this. I'm very excited to talk about men's health and excited to hear all the ideas and all the wonderful things people are doing out through the health department to, get those into our office. One of the big things for me is I have been on our mobile units and kind of like the previous presenter talked about, we have done some of those interesting things where, we'll take the mobile unit to the lake for the day, right? I mean, men are there fishing, they're there boating. So we use that as an opportunity to kind of come to them on their time. Some of our spaces are in counties with huge employers of male clients like Ditch Witch. So we try to be near some of those places so that when they do have time or they step out on their lunch break, we're right there and we're available to see those male clients. I think one of our hugest barriers in the beginning for our male clients was, again, those programs, women, infants, and children. Where do men fit in those appointments? So part of our advertising pieces and our signage, we really don't advertise necessarily the program. We kind of advertise a lot of our services, free blood pressure screening, free glucose cholesterol testing. A lot of times we can get a male client in for just a simple blood pressure check. They get comfortable with us. Again, on our unit, it has been all male staff, with the exception of our community health workers. It's been a male nurse. We have our transportation specialist. He serves as our clerk, so he's checking those male clients in. So when they step on that trailer, those men are immediately greeted by other men. And I think that makes them feel a little bit more comfortable, helps them relate. If we have them have a seat on the bench, we get their blood pressure, and the next thing you know, 30 minutes has gone by. And we're talking about other concerns with their health, other mental health concerns, and getting them those resources they need. And it was just as something simple as, hey, I started blood pressure medicine last week. Can you just check my blood pressure real quick? So that's been wonderful for us, getting those men on that trailer. And then talk to them about the clinics. There are services available for those men in the clinics. Men are very much a part of our family planning program, and encouraging that really well men's health exam every year, and the importance of maintaining that. So I think it kind of helps us being out in that unit with men to lead them into some of those clinics where they can still reach those same services. What kind of questions does anybody have? I prepared kind of a quick little thing about mobile and how we help men. Anybody have any questions?
Do men feel awkward coming on to the mobile unit when they first come in?
I don't think they do, because the first person they see is a male. We have our awnings out. we actually have a lot of games. We put games out too at the mobile unit. So we have a lot of yard games out there. Most of the time, we'll have like I guess I forget what it's called. It's where you throw the tennis ball, and it's like a yard golf. So we have a lot of yard games out when we're there. Us male employees are usually outside the unit. We kind of utilize those games just to kind of start that conversation because they're like, "What are you guys doing over here? You mean the state pays you to stand outside and play games?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they pay me to stay outside, play games, and talk with you guys about what your needs are and how we can help bring those needs to your community." And I think they really like that because it's, we're not in a suit and tie. A lot of times I'll wear a nice t-shirt with my scrub pants. Randy comes to work in a button up in jeans and his boots. So I think they see us as more a part of their community and they don't necessarily associate us with state officials, so to speak.
Thank you for sharing. I mean, that was an extra to just this idea of creative ways to connect with men. And I think every health department can take that application of the games and apply it to their situation. Thank you so much, Matthew, for sharing. We got to move on. I appreciate your participation and welcome as the newest DNM. And we're glad that you're able to serve your community in a different capacity now.
Awesome. Thank you, Ira.
You're welcome. Okay. Our next presenter is, I'm sorry, I'm trying to post him get him posted. Is Sean Bridges. And Sean and I met several years ago because we did the training on a curriculum on my shoulders and for several days. So, and we've been going back and forth. And Sean is a health educator for Delaware County Health Department, and we're happy to have you here, Sean. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ira, for giving me the opportunity to speak today. A lot of the things that I was going to talk about have already been covered by some of the other males that have spoke, which is perfectly fine, which means we're all on the same wavelength when it comes to engaging males. My primary job with engaging males is to meet them outside of the four walls of the health department. And what we have found and what Daniel and Jeremy and the others have said, one thing about men is most of us, or the majority of us, like competition. And so if we can create an environment that even has the tiniest bit of competition in it, it sparks that interest, which then we can utilize to start a conversation to build the rapport with that male, which then segues us to allow time to talk about the services we offer at the health department and how what their perception may be. And I always try to get the males to utilize their own words when they're describing the health department, and then go in and fill in the gaps. So, I've heard the WIC program be mentioned, or Children's First. Another big one that we have a lot of good, decent male involvement is in our Sooner Start program as well. And so, but by filling in those gaps, we have already built that rapport. We can let them know that the health department services primarily are all the advertising shows, or you would think that it's geared mostly towards women, but that our males can benefit from every service that the health department offers as well, in one form or the other. The other thing too that I'd like to mention that I didn't hear, but men like food. So if you can incorporate some sort of competition and food aspect, you're going to get a higher ROI, or return on investment, with males. And those are things that have worked for us. Now, fortunately, in District 4 and in Delaware County, we do have a male nurse who is either on site or out at the mobile unit. So that does help break down some of those barriers if a male client comes in for services. a lot of times males are more comfortable talking with males. And it just helps break those barriers down. The other thing too is it gives them a chance to talk about the commonalities that they have between each other, which then is going to build the rapport even further along. The other thing that I had written down to kind of touch on was if this will be the last thing that I touch on, but for males, if it's quick, if it's convenient, and it's worth our time, we're more likely to engage in that opportunity. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Ira, unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you for just bringing up the point of food. Anything that connects with males and breaking down prejudice and building relationships is so important. Okay, we're going to go on with our next presenter, and our next presenter is Timothy Vikamp from Pontotoc County Health Department. He's an administrative technician 4. And Timothy, would you just briefly explain what you do? Okay, Timothy is not there. If he gets back on, then we'll come back to him. Let's see if our next one is there. William.
Yes, I'm here, Ira.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I'd like to introduce our presenter, William Shirkey. He's at the Woodward County Health Department as a social service specialist. Thank you for joining us. And again, I was visiting Woodward and was able to meet in person with William. And the time is yours.
All right, so outside of what everybody else has already said, I really only have one thing that I've noticed is differently. I work in close relations with a women's shelter and rehab. So I've got a lot of referrals. Like I would work with the wife or partner, and then they would talk to their partner, and then I would get in contact with that whole family. So it's been a kind of a weird but good circumstance, because I would get people from all over Oklahoma who have been referred back to me. So I think the furthest away family that I've worked from is from McAllister, which is like 6 hours away from here, which is wild to me. But just getting that family connected to our services here in Woodward allowed me to get them referred into McAllister and get them involved there. So it's worked out really well working with that facility. But it kind of going back to what everyone has said, there's kind of a lack of diversity in what the health department offers males, or what they present that is offered to males. Some of the things that I've had asked in our communities is we have the tobacco health, or the tobacco quit line. They're like, could you guys host a group of men so that we were all here together and we create that accountability with one another? It's not just one person. Oh, you gave us the helpline, you gave us this Nicorette, great, but when I'm having a bad day, I need somebody to talk to. So it's kind of came back to, can we create kind of a community sense for these men going through a difficult time? That's really all I have that's any different from what anything else that has been said.
I have a question for you, man. We have a little time on our hand. Thinking about the health departments, I'm a male, I'm coming to the health department. We know that the building is a formidable structure because many men, it's I'm going in for STD or something. But is there something that can we can do with our county health departments? I don't know that will make it more appealing to men. Be it outside, be it inside, side, or whatever, that will somehow make it a little easier to approach.
So what we've done, and it sounds like it's happening on other mobile units, is just doing general health visits. We had a nurse practitioner for a little bit who would do general well screenings. They would see them if they were sick, like physicals, like work physicals, anything like that. So it was a great service that we could offer that was a little bit different than what they could do in a general health department, because they could come in and just be seen. Because I think a lot of men who are in the clientele that we see, lower income, they put off their health to provide other things for their family. So they kind of take the back seat to it, and they're like, well, I put off my health, and I've had a client say this to me. I've put off doing this so long for mine. I knew I've had problems, but I've put it off because I didn't think I could afford to go to the doctor. And then we offered this free general health check, and they're like, yes, I'm there. And they came twice a month for 3 or 4 months to get everything sorted out. So that's just one experience that we've had in our mobile unit.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, William. I want to just touch on this topic of health, of mobile health unit a little more, because this has been a new phenomenon. I mean, I've been here for almost 9 years. This has been a recent thing since post-COVID. What kind of places do you go to? And this is a question for any of you men that are involved with the mobile health unit, that you go to. Do you go to set locations, or do you go to various locations?
So we have a set schedule that we go to. I think it's 6 or 7 different small towns in the communities, or in the district, that don't have any health services at all in their towns. So, which we have a massive amount of miles to cover out here in District 1 with the Panhandle and all of that. That is just very, very loose population spread. There's probably 100 so miles between Woodward and Guyman, and there's probably 4 to 5 doctors' offices in that. So all those people in the middle, like that's one of our big targeted areas, is out in the Panhandle.
Okay, well, it's time to move on. Charles, Daniel, Jeremy, Sean, Matthew, and William, thank you for participating in this section of our video training conference. We're going to move on to our next presenter. We'd like to thank Marquise Dennis for presenting today. He is the founder and executive director of Birthright Living Legacy out of Tulsa. I met Marquise last October when I went to a fatherhood conference there at the Dream Center.
Last time,
and we're welcome to have you here today. Marquise, a father advocate who validates the merit that fathers bring to parenting in the home. I'll say that again. A fatherhood advocate who validates the merit that fathers bring to parenting in the home, out of the home, or incarcerated. This also includes male relatives and males in the community who step up to the plate as fathers. So, Marquise, thank you for joining us today. And Marquise is not even in Oklahoma. He's, I think, in Omaha, Nebraska at a conference, and he's taken time out of the conference to present. So thank you for giving of your time.
Hey, I'm honored to be here. I just want to say thank you for inviting me, Ira. Super excited to be here. Want to say thanks to my friend Roger Coulter, Jeremy Colbert, and Byron Dixon. These are some of the guys that I have been in community with on this fatherhood journey. So snaps out to Tulsa and Muskogee as we have come together to try to reach some dads. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. All right, did it work? Can you see my screen?
Yes, you're good.
Perfect.
We see a yellow and blue something.
Awesome. It's black on my screen, so I'm glad it's blue on yours. That's awesome. So just know that it might change colors and be multi-technicolored. That was not on purpose. But yeah, so we want to talk. I wanted to talk to everyone today about this amazing project called Being a Human and Not Being a Human Being and Not Being a Human Doing. A lot of the things that you all talked about today will be stuff that I cover as well. I've had, like I said, multiple conversations with men's groups and individuals that are trying to reach men. We have been blessed to have a success to where we have been able to reach men. So I'm going to share some of the tactics that have led to me doing that with the group. Like I said, those three gentlemen have been involved in this process as well. So shout out to the health departments for all of your commitment. So on today, we're going to go on a journey to see how we can reach and attract fathers no matter what the circumstances are when we meet them. A lot of people in your line of work meet fathers in a lot of random different instances. And so it's just being able to make sure that you capitalize on that time and it's not seen upon as a missed opportunity. And you're looking back thinking to yourself, man, I wish I would have, I should have, or I could have done. It's just how can I absolutely capitalize on that time? So to give you a little bit of information about us, as Ira was saying, Birthright Living Legacy is a fatherhood organization that validates the merit that fathers bring to parenting. And we celebrate and support fathers, whether they're in the home, out of the home, or incarcerated, because we believe in building family legacy, one father at a time. And one of the things about fathering is what I've noticed is most fathers get treated as if they are an accessory. And people look at them like, well, if we get one, that's fine, but I can do this by myself. Or we don't really need dads; they're kind of extra. And so that's where a lot of the conversation that your team has been having isn't around making sure that men feel as if they're validated, that they're valued, they're important, they're seen, they're heard, and all of those things. We take it a step farther, make sure men know that they're also responsible, because even though those things may happen, they are not excused from being able to be present or realizing the fullness of what their responsibility is in the family unit. So,
Mr.
Yep.
Dennis, before you move forward, are we to be seeing slides?
Oh, are you guys not seeing these slides?
And no, we see your home screen.
Oh, dang. All right. Well, let's.
I was following your presentation and I was like, ah.
Thank you, Kamisha.
I'm glad you was paying attention because I was thinking we was rolling. Okay. So that's not. Let's do this. You might have to pull it up because for whatever reason, it's not giving me that option.
I have to say, we're good to go. I got you.
Okay. We'll go with, yeah, we'll just go with the company profile, page 3.
Pause a little between each one so people can just read what has been presented.
Oh, okay.
Are you able to see, Mr. Dennis, of what I'm on profile?
Yes, I can see you.
Okay, so whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, so we'll go to the next slide now. So our fathers that we encounter and that we specifically market to are the experienced fathers, the abandoned fathers, the supervised fathers, and the step-ups. So what experienced father is, that is a father that had a father. Doesn't necessarily mean they had a great experience. It just means they're used to having a male in the home, and what those expectations are, or at least from the guidelines that they've had. And then we have our abandoned fathers. These are the fathers that didn't have fathers. It could be because mom is a widow. It could be due to, father being absent in prison, all those things, where pastors or, community members, coaches, those sorts of things, big brothers, uncles, step up in the community to be in their lives and to help them to be able to learn some of those missing conversations. And then we have our supervised dads. Now, this was the section that I fell into, where I was just a baby daddy and I didn't really know, what it was that I was supposed to be doing, how I was supposed to do it. And then when I realized that I was doing it wrong, I didn't know where I could go to even find out. And so as I was on that journey, that was what helped me to form Birthright Living Legacy. And then we have our step ups, which is one of my favorite areas, because without this area, I would not be here today. The step ups are the step parents, the community members, the health department workers that are taking the time out to engage with me as a youth or as an individual, trying to make my way in life. These are the some of the most important people because they do it out of love as opposed to having to do it. One of the terms that I learned of in this work was a modern day orphan. And what a modern day orphan is how many people, if I was to ask all 71 of us, how many people in your phones are paid to be on your phone? I'm guessing most of you would say none. Or what do you mean by paid to be there? But when you think about it, the youth of today, they are being told that they can make it, they can do it, they can achieve anything, but every one of those people that encourage them are paid to do so, whether it be counselors, whether it be teachers, coaches, those community members that are paid to do those jobs. And so they're not able to receive it in the same way and get that value. So if you go to the next slide, please. So today we're going to talk on how we can serve dads while encouraging them to be more involved. Number two, how much we care before we show how much we know. Three, myths that you have to overcome. And then number four, giving them hope. So this is going to be very important as far as our outline goes, but you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So in the journey of parenting, unfortunately, dads have to start their journey a little bit later than moms. And so mom has the connectivity opportunity during the 9 months of pregnancy, where her body is changing, most of her daily habits and routines, all those things start to change. My wife, when she was pregnant, she lost the ability to drink coffee just because it didn't taste good anymore. However, for dads, the bond really creates and takes shape, as they were talking about earlier, once a father has an opportunity to hold that child, to be able to touch that child, that skin to skin time, that play time. And that's what helps him to start his journey of maturity. They've done some studies to show, which we'll get into a little bit later, about how important that skin to skin time is for baby and for dad. I just remember being so happy to say a couple of words in that labor room and watching my son vehemently try to find me because he heard that voice that he was so used to, but never been able to connect to. Next slide. So when we're talking about parenting, at Birthright, we like to bring it up in this way. We like to talk values and value. So moms, you get 90% or 95% of your values from mom, which is attitudes, beliefs, ethics, morals, manners, ideas. And then you get 95% of your value from dad. This is your worth, merit, and importance. And if a child leaves home without either one of these vital roles, then something else will fill that. This is where we get the suicide numbers, the runaway numbers, crime, pornography addictions, drug overdose, some of those stats that they were going over earlier. That's where this comes from. And this is why we have to make sure that what we're doing is engaging with both parents because they're intrinsically valuable. It doesn't matter, like I said, how we as a society feel about certain aspects of it. The studies show that a child does better in every category when both parents are involved. It's funny that when they show that if you take a single mom and a single dad, everything equal, the dad always wins in every category. And the single father wins for men by a long shot. By women, it's not that much, but they still win. And the reason is because they found that if fathers are the sole parent, they will. Oh, go ahead. Hello.
You're okay. Somebody joined and didn't mute. I got it.
Okay, I got it. But they found that if the father is the sole parent, there's an 85% chance that mom will be invited in to co-parent. And if it's on the other way, where the mom is the single parent, there's only a 5% chance. So going back to the stats, it's just that both parents are absolutely vital to the raising of a child. And that's the narrative that I want to drive home, that both parents have to be involved, whether they're in the same home or not. They still have to be engaged. Next slide, please. All right, so one of the prominent studies done in 2014 in the Journal of Nutrition Neuroscience examined the brain scans for first-time fathers before and after the birth of their children, and the research found that fathers who were more involved in caregiving activities such as changing diapers and feeding their infants showed structural changes in their brains. Specifically, those men demonstrated increased gray matter in volumes in regions associated with empathy, social cognition, such as the amygdala and the superior temporal cortex. In another study in 2017, it shows that how becoming a father influences the brain activity and processing the infant related cues. The research found that new fathers exhibited increased activity in brain areas involving the emotional processing and rewards when showing the pictures of their own infants compared to pictures of unfamiliar infants. This suggests that fatherhood can enhance emotional processing and attachment related brain responses. So in the book, The Boy Crisis, Dr. Warren Farrell talks about how important it is for fathers to be engaged. Because what happens is when fathers have this portion of raising children taken away from them, again, they can't even start that process because a portion of their brain doesn't even open until they are able to take care of a child that belongs to them that can't take care of themselves. And this is why a lot of times men don't have the maturity levels that they are supposed to be reaching in fatherhood, depending on which areas of fathers that we're engaging with. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So whenever, people are engaging with dads, you can kind of keep these things in mind. Now that we have dad's mentality in check, next slide. That was just for the men. Sharks with lasers, can't ever go wrong with that. So we didn't show the wife's video. So I don't know if Ira, if you want to go ahead and show that, that would be great.
I will try to pull up, so keep on talking.
Okay. So in this video that you're going to see, this video is designed to help people to understand a little bit about why fatherhood is so important, what it really means when you're talking about the exclusion of either parent. This just happens to be a true story focused on when a father is kept from his daughter and the lengths at which he had to go to in order to be involved into his daughter's life. And why this is so important. It's hard to explain it because we haven't watched the video yet, but once they get that pulled up, you'll be able to get to see, and I'll be able to talk a little bit more about it. But it's giving you a little bit more about it. This is, like I said, this is just an opportunity for you to gain compassion, to be able to see in the lens of what it could be like for some men out there trying to be engaged with their fathers or be engaged with their children versus the story or the narrative that you might have or the bias that you might be coming in with of, well, he's probably just not wanting to be there. And so whenever you're ready, you can show that video. If you can't.
I'm not ready yet, so keep
Oh,
talking.
you're not
Sorry.
ready. So I'll give you a little bit of story about my story. So I am a father of 4, and I did 3 children outside of marriage, 1 inside of marriage. I'm a recovering drug dealer, and so I did some time in the federal prison because of selling a substance that is legal and now on every corner. So I sold marijuana in 2 countries and 3 states. And so I spent that time trying to figure out how could I fill a God-sized hole that was left in me because my father wasn't around. And I spent a lot of my time as a youth trying to figure out, why am I different? What is wrong with me? How come my friends are different than I? And how much of me am I supposed to keep? How much am I supposed to change? And how much is it that is actually wrong with me versus how I'm actually made? And this is going to the point that we talked about, that Jeremy was talking about earlier, when men are trying to muster up the energy just to go put themselves in a state of vulnerability, depending on what your background is, depending on what your circumstances are from where you grew up, how you grew up, will determine how you feel. So when you're going in to any of these conversations with anyone that's claiming to help you, you have to be a little bit leery when you don't have one of your parents involved because the trust is already broken. And one of the great things about the work that we're doing is being able to help dads to know that, again, they're seen and they're heard and they're valuable, because without that, you will not be able to connect with them. And so with my story, in the process of me learning that, I was going to have to spend time in federal prison, I said, well, what is my purpose for being here outside of paying for the mistake that I made? And the voice told me, where else will you get an opportunity to interview 1,500 men? So I said, okay, all of our fruit has bared and we ended in the same place. So I started with a question. And my question was, tell me your favorite part about being your father's son. And what I didn't realize was how reactive or radioactive that question could be. Depending on the response to that question, I was able to learn so much about the individuals that I was talking to. If they didn't have their father around, it would immediately be met with a cuss word or some kind of phraseology that would be very, very negative. If their dads were around, I could typically tell the crime that they did based on how they answered that question. And so when I was going through getting the opportunity to ask all of those men the answers to that question, it helped me to be able to do a lot of research. And a lot of the work that I do now is based on that research that I done there. And so with that, that gave me the opportunity to be able to live out loud. And so as we're living out loud, that's being transparent and being able to show people, hey, I don't have all the answers. Because a lot of times when people are coming in the fatherhood space and manhood space, we have to understand that when a man is asking for help societally, he is taught that he is admitting weakness. He is admitting that he doesn't have what it takes to be a great leader, father, or all the above, depending on how he was raised. But for the most part, we all remember when dad used to drive around before Garmin's were invented, and they used to drive around for hours hoping that they would find that place to get them right back on the road. Well, inside, he was thinking, man, I wish I could pull over and ask for directions. I wish I could have somebody tell me where to go. And depending on what kind of wife he had, she was probably giving him navigations up to date. And so, but for the most part, men do not have it in them to stop and ask for directions. So when you're encountering men, you have to know that going in. Because if you don't know that, that is going to put you at a deficit because you're going to come with a very prescriptive mentality as opposed to trying to empathize and understand where they're coming from.
Mr. Dennis, there is a question. I have a question for you. The wife's
Sure.
video, is that located on your website?
Yes, it is. It's
Okay, so I have it.
the only one with the woman.
Okay, so I have it and I'll show it. But before we move to that, as I cue it up, there's a question in the chat. Is there a service or literature to assist a mother in bringing up a child when the father is not in the child's life by his choice?
I would say yes, there is, but almost always when I find out about the choice, because I spend time talking to the people, when people say it's their choice, usually what has been given is an ultimatum of you parent the way that I want you to parent, or you can't see your kid. And then when that ultimatum is given, because a lot of men don't know how to articulate what they bring to parenting. So without them being able to articulate it and a mother being able to receive it, typically that is what is the holdup. It's usually not the dad. There's very rare occasions I've ever found where a dad doesn't actually want anything to do with their kids. It's usually, like I said, a misunderstanding of because I've done these talks for for ladies as well that were very, very angry as we were talking about some of this stuff. But they realized they were actually holding the child hostage and they didn't even know it. They thought they were protecting the child, but what they didn't realize is regardless of how you feel, even if he is not the greatest of fathers, outside of there being actual imminent danger of, some sort of sexual attack or him being shot at on a regular basis, there's almost no reason for you to withhold a child unless the father's just extremely or abusive at all. I won't even say extremely, just abusive at all. But again, that is something that has to be determined by a professional because sometimes you can call it abuse when there's things that a father actually teaches a child when they do the rough and tumble play that helps children to learn what I'm actually feeling hurt or does it actually just scare me? And so some of the times when dads get an opportunity for the child to hurt them or they hurt the child on accident, there's opportunities for the child to learn where their body ends, where dads begin. And so there's some of that stuff that is built into fathering that some ladies don't necessarily know. I mean, some men don't even know. And so that's why I say I would have to talk to the person, but yes, we would definitely be able to help with that. And there's ways to be able to help moms get dads engaged through our programs as well.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show the video since we have that queued up.
There was always this strive inside of me, because it's not just not having a father, but also having a mother who didn't want you. And so I never really knew who I was. I never had my father in my life to even know, oh, this part of my personality is normal, or, you know what I mean? Like, I was very much not like my mother. And so I just always felt like the oddball. In 2018, I was at work in my current job, and I get a phone call, and the man on the other end of the phone says, is this Crystal DeBose? And I said, yeah. He said, okay, well, do you have family in Dallas, Oregon? And I was like, I mean, I got a broken family, so I really don't know how to answer that question, you know? And he's like, well, do you know Myron DeBose? And I can't express to you the feeling that came over me, but it was just like if everything in my body could have stopped working, just everything froze, and like my ears went wonky. And the gentleman on the other side of the phone, he's like, I'm going to take that as a yes. And he's like, so I just need to let you know that Myron DeBose has passed away, and you're his sole survivor next of kin, and so we have to notify someone. And I'm still trying to gain mobility and functionality of speaking, you know? And so I'm like, okay, this is the first time his name has ever been associated with me, and now he's dead. And then I just had this tug inside of me saying, you know, he may not have been there for you, but if he truly had nobody else, if you truly were estranged from him to where the point that he never knew you, but he has no one else in his life, and you had to be the one that was called, like, the least I can do is go and take care of his estate, because that's, in my mind, just an awful thing. I would do that for a stranger. I open the door and I look around, and there's baby pictures of me everywhere, and there's no less than 80 pieces of paper with my name, my date of birth, and my social written on it. I walk into his bedroom, and there's a box in his closet that says Crystal DeBose, and I pulled it down, and it was just baby gifts from all ages, you know, jewelry, all kinds of things. And I'm shattered, like, in the best worst way. Like, I don't even know how to feel. I'm just very numb and very in a state of like, what is happening, you know? And so I remember just pacing back and forth in his house thinking, who is this man? And how could you love me but never have me? And why did I get left with the parent who didn't want me if you clearly wanted me, you know? I couldn't even process it, but I just remember sitting in that feeling and just really taking in the fact, like, for the first time, I felt like another human genuinely loved me, not because of what I could bring to the table or what I did. I did nothing for this man. He didn't even know me, but he lived his life out to say that he loved me. And so I found myself in my mind saying, oh, wow, I love you, Dad. Because it completely transformed me, you know, and I'm not the only one. Most of my friends growing up in all of the cities I've been into, predominantly what I saw was not having a father. And just being able to see the impact and the change and the difference it made in me, I'm like, man, how many of us are still out there who are having to live a lie simply because you don't know better? Birthright Living Legacy is a nonprofit organization spurred on by fathers, because we see the gap in fatherhood. We see that the nuclear family is slowly moving fathers out of their roles. And so we want to come against that and say, we want to see our generation moving in a happy, productive way. Well, we've got to bring it back to the basics. I'm not sitting here saying I've got it all together, but what I'm saying is I have the pieces to now make my decision and push forward what's passionate on my heart.
There's a little bit more, but that's okay. We don't need that. If we could go ahead and go to the next slide. No, it's all right. You can turn it on. So the reason I show that video, though, is because it starts to help people to gain compassion for the fact that you just don't understand what other people are going through. You just don't know what the dynamic is of that father or that man that's sitting in your office. And so I definitely want to make sure to leave that with you so you can think about it. If you can go to the Services to Dads tab. So these are the services that I wanted you all to focus on and make sure that you had in your quiver of things. One, time. This is the biggest service that you could possibly give to a dad or to a man specifically. They show that, I don't have the stats on here, but it used to be when a man was about in his, 15, he had 15 to 20 friends when he was in middle school and high school. And then into adulthood, it boiled down to about like 10, about 30 years ago. Whereas now you're lucky to have 2 at 30 or above. So this is what I call the Chick-fil-A theory. People are not an interruption to your day. People are your day. And so this is one of those things where you have to make sure that you're giving people time. Move from success to significance, meaning that as you're engaging with men, set your priorities to how you can engage with those men and how you can start to build relationships, not necessarily that the win has to be that they, sign up for whatever the process or whatever the thing is for today. But did you have a positive encounter? Did you greet them where they are? Did you allow that man to be able to be heard and seen in that moment? Because that is a huge thing. And then we have the listening ear. You must know that you have to, you don't have to agree or validate what someone is saying, but sometimes just listening and being able to say, all right. Like I said, this is the Chick-fil-A theory. Because agreeably, the chicken could be good or not. That doesn't matter. But sometimes the reason why people go to Chick-fil-A is because it's the best they've been treated all day. It's the first time that someone addresses them by their name and is kind to them and says, it's my pleasure to be able to serve you and to help and to go over and above. That's what makes people go back. It's not because the food is good. I mean, that helps, but when you're trying to engage with men, the thing is that are you making the intentional effort to make sure that I know that I'm valuable to you? And then connectivity. This is what some of you were talking about earlier as well. Finding ways to be able to connect after that initial meeting. This is sales 101. But in fatherhood space, what I've learned is it takes roughly at about 10 interactions before they start to trust you. And that is a long time. It takes a lot of effort in order to be able to build and engage. Now, you can shortcut those things by being able to have shared experiences. If you share music, if you have things that you guys have done together, like served in the Army or things like that, those can cut those things in half. But if you don't have those things that you have in common, it's going to take about 10 touch points. So trying to find out how many different ways that you can engage. You guys have those vehicles. You guys have those vehicles where you can go around finding out these events that are happening in people's cities and their towns, showing up to those things. You don't have to necessarily be handing out things, but let me see you, see me, see you. And that goes a long way when connecting with men. Next slide. So in the sales world, you're always prospecting, presenting, and following up. And so as like I said, some of you guys were talking about this earlier, building rapport, finding the needs and the hot button, and then pounce on that hot button. You have to take the time to do the sales process the right way. Even if a man doesn't understand the sales process, what this does is that helps them to know that they are being treated fairly, because all the people that do it correctly, that's what happens. Good morning, how are you? Wow. Respond to that question, not just, hey, how are you? Awesome. Did you sign up for the, because now I know that you're just here to sell me something. But the reason why these things are important, because it helps to show dads that they're more likely to be able to use these skills as a father as well as in their career. And it helps them to be a better father and co-parent when these processes are carried out. So we teach this to dads because a lot of times, even as fathers, like when we go to work, we don't mind doing the sales process. We'll build rapport. We'll find out what they need, show how our product or service meets that need. And then, we pounce on what it is that their desired result is, and we give it to them. But when we get home, we shut that off. And then it's like, I'm going to sit and do my thing, as opposed to saying, greetings to your, your spouse or your partner, or greeting your kids, finding out what was going on in their world, what they need, pouncing on those hot buttons. It's a full-on sale. So you have to be thinking about these things with the context of, I'm not trying to get done, but I'm trying to move from sales, or I'm trying to move from the success mindset to significance. What can I bring from this conversation that's going to be significant, that will build the rapport and keep that relationship wanting to move forward? Next slide, please. This is my favorite because they mentioned it earlier. If you build it, they will come. Food is absolutely necessary. Men go to environments where they are celebrated, not where they are just tolerated. So I say this to make sure that when you're setting up any of the programs or operating any of your programs, please make sure that the space that you have are father-friendly, man-friendly, and the pictures and the literature and resources, the language that you use for men and and fathers when speaking, to when you're speaking to fathers, you have to specifically say fathers, because parenting is code word for mother. When you say parents, most places they mean mother. And so that is not as inclusive as it seems. But when you say father, you'll start to see the chests, you'll start to see guys inflate, because it gets them excited to know, hey, I am supposed to be here. And then, do I feel welcome or do I feel blamed? Is there accusatory language, demeaning language towards fathers? Because even if you don't know that you've done it, if you're not paying attention to me, you will say something that will shut me down. And that is why it's so important to be engaged, so you can see the difference. And then, are you aware of your biases? And this is one of the things I like to share about myself. When I was a CASA, I was aware that I had a bias, but I didn't understand why I had a bias. So my bias was against, 600-pound live people, not because I hated them. It was just because I didn't have anyone in my circle that I could have met or known that weighed 600 pounds. The only opportunity I had was what I saw on TV. I see a guy walking out with 32 pizzas, or somebody buying 16 ice creams. So that created a bias in my mind. So when I saw bigger people, it would cause me to act a certain way. And so those are the things that you need to be aware of on your team and in your own mind, of what biases do you have? Are you afraid of a certain race? Are you afraid of bigger men or people with muscles? Be aware of that stuff, because you'll take that into conversations if you're not paying attention. Next slide, please. This is a fun one. Take your meds. Simon T. Bailey taught me this, and it's take your meds. It's meditate, exercise, diet, and sleep. Now, this helps you when you meditate. It helps you to slow down to the speed of now. So before you go engage with a father, take a moment to breathe, deep breaths, sit up straight, and just center yourself. Be there, present right now. Don't say, oh, I got to talk to this guy just before I go do this other thing, because that other thing will be looming. Now, exercise. As you can see, physical exercise actively triggers and releases some endorphins, chemicals in the brain, and these things help you with your moods. They help you to elevate your mind. Diet. I'm not a big fan of that myself, and please don't ever tell my wife that I put this on here. But just because I don't like it doesn't make it any less true. And that's just what it is. I'm not a big fan of diet. My mom told me when I was a young kid, when I start buying my own food, I can order whatever I wanted. And I do that in adulthood to my own demise. If you guys could stand up, you'd see that my thing is in reverse. My belly sticks out and my chest is sunk in. So, and then sleep. Sleep is one of those things that is underrated. People don't think about how important sleep is to being able to do your job well. It makes you more irritable. It doesn't give you all of the things to be able to. It's just like your trash file on your computer. If you don't give your body a chance to delete those files, you're still carrying them from the day before. So we'll go to the next slide. I want to make sure to get through this so I can get the question and answer. So myths to overcome. This part is very vital to the work that you're doing. Now, I put these in here because it's very hard sometimes to look inside and see what are some of the myths that you have to overcome before somebody tells you about them. So for the State Department of Health, some people could be thinking, man, am I in trouble? Will I get in trouble if I, reach out for help, with birthright, what's doing fatherhood stuff? Somehow people have devised this idea that, we are somehow in support of abuse, or we hate women. And so those are things that we have to be very careful of to make sure that we address in the beginning. That's why I make sure in the beginning of every talk, I always make sure people understand that both parents are intrinsically valuable. And I'll tell you a quick story about the mental health. What I was working with some mental health professionals, they were trying to figure out how is it that we can't get men to come in to get mental health. And I said, well, you got to think about this. In the Black community, African American community, it's really hard to get parents to take their kids to the emergency room, not because they don't want to get their kids help, not because they don't care about their children. It's because that 75% of all children that are taken into the foster system or taken from DHS are Black and brown families. So for them, they're thinking, if I take my child in for this broken arm, am I going to somehow get my child taken away from me? Because they don't fully understand all of the things that are going on. So I had to tell these mental health professionals, you need to educate people as they're coming in to let them know, hey, there's only a certain amount of things that you can say to me that I have to report. Outside of that, it doesn't matter if you tell me that you're cheating on your wife or your girlfriend, I can't by law repeat that. And if they know that they have that level of security, it helps them to open up more. So dispelling myths and being able to figure out ways that you can engage with people and dispel those myths even before they bring them up is going to be extremely helpful when dealing with men. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah. So I just kind of went through all of that. But this is what I wanted to, this is the things that, I was telling you about. So, like I said, with us, those are some of the myths that we had to overcome every time that we speak or anytime we go somewhere to do anything, because it's really a thing. People somehow believe that, oh man, oh, you celebrate dad, so you think that lesbians can't raise kids. I say, no, I didn't say that at all. What I'm saying is a two-parent home is always better than a one-parent home. Now, until I have some documentation that shows me something different, I don't know about lesbian homes or same-sex marriage homes. All I know is that both parents that birth a child are intrinsically valuable to that child. And so I have to make sure that I'm disarming those, not with my opinion and conjecture, but with actual facts, because it helps people to build trust, because everything moves at the speed of trust. And so when I say something in that office, they need to be able to go check into it and find those answers on their own. So next slide, please. And so to give you hope, I wanted to encourage you all to tap into your greatness for the work that you're doing, because these are the only skills that are needed to push forward. And I'm sure all of you already have them. Creativity, adaptability, collaboration, storytelling, and emotional intelligence. These are the things that you're going to need to connect to men. You have to be creative. I love that you guys are bringing games and thinking of ways to be able to engage dads in a non-traditional way to disarm those myths and thoughts that they may come with. Having adaptability, knowing that the guy that you serve on Monday is not going to be the same as the guy on Tuesday, and that everybody has a unique story, they have unique needs, and even though they may need the same service, the way that you present that service has to be adapted to them. Going back to the sales 101. Collaboration is really important. Knowing what resources are out there, even if you don't provide them, gives them so much hope to say, no, we don't do that, and then just leave them there. It's like, oh, you really don't care anyway. But if you were to say, no, we don't actually do that. However, I do know of a place here or a place here, you can call this person or that person. Those collaboratory opportunities are so important. And for you, one of the things that really is great is when you send a client over, call that person that you send them to. Hey, I'm going to be sending a guy by the name of Jerry over. This is what's going on, and this is what you talk to. I sent him over. I don't know that you can help him, but just know that he's going to be calling. That helps me to be able to say, oh, yeah, they called. So now Jerry's thinking, wow, they really care. Byron took the extra step to make sure that I landed softly. So even if Marquise can't help me, I know that they cared enough about me in order to do this. Now, storytelling is really great because it helps them to realize that they're not the only one. Whatever the struggle is, whatever the hurdle that they're coming with, being able to have stories that help you tell the journey of someone that is utilizing the services that you're trying to present will help you to be able to break down walls that you didn't even know existed. They might not even know that existed, and to have the emotional intelligence to read those people. Those are very important, vital skills that you need to have, and I believe everyone on this call does have them, or they wouldn't have hired you. So next slide. This is the end of my presentation. This is how you can reach me, find me on any of the places, the platforms, the services, and I'm here to answer any questions. So next slide. Thank you all for having me. Did I finish on time? 43.
Oh, you're ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
Okay, I do have a question. I like the point that you just brought out a couple minutes ago. And when you expound on it just a little, everything moves at the speed of trust.
Yes.
Because that seems to tie in to this whole context of building rapport and relationships. So it's kind of maybe the something that needs to be mentally at the foundation. But please share about that.
Yeah, so everything moves at the speed of trust is something that I learned from Dr. Stephen Covey, but I've practiced every day of my life. And a lot of people are assuming that they don't trust people, but helping them to realize how much they do trust by driving and eating food at restaurants and all those things are trust. So you have to let people understand that, first of all, there's a borderline trust that you have to walk out your door every day. And then building upon that trust is very unique to that individual. And so that's where it really boils down to making sure that you are being seen as a human being, not being seen as a human doing. Because if you're just a human doing, I'm just a box that you need to check off, and you're not going to be very engaged with me. And I'm going to feel that every bit of that, as Jeremy was talking about earlier. But if you take the time to, even if you're just connecting with me in this 5 minutes and you give me your undivided attention, I'm going to trust that you are taking time to know me, not a process. And that is the only way that you can successfully refer, successfully engage, or get people to do anything. If they don't trust where it came from, it's as good as me handing you a flyer, Ira, and saying, hey, how about you throw this away?
Thank you. Any other thoughts, questions, or comments from our audience?
So please feel free to unmute your mics if you have the capability to do so. There's a lot of good kudos in the chat from all of our presenters today. And it looks like everybody enjoyed the video as well. I don't see anything else.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed it. And like I said, if I'm ever here as a resource, even to bounce ideas, like I said, those guys that I named earlier, Roger, Jeremy, and Byron, they reach out all the time, and we try to, figure out ways that we can collaborate to reach fathers, and the things that they can't help with, I can, and the things I can't, they can. And so it's just really, it's really awesome to have this opportunity to be here, Ira and Ms. Kenesha. Thank you so much for allowing me to present. I have to go meet with Magic Johnson across the way, and I will see y'all in just a few.
Again, thank you, Marquise, for joining. And I want to thank all of, from James at the beginning to the you men out in the health departments. Thank you for all of your contribution for this. And the goal of this video conference has been, of course, to promote men's health and fatherhood. And just hopefully we're gaining some just different insights that we can just mentally know how to prepare and reach men, or in a practical way, like having the games out in front of the mobile unit. But just if we can think outside of the box and be creative in that, I like what I heard one person shared me recently, and the context was don't be afraid to fall as we go forward trying things. If we've looked, we've taken different things into consideration, it's okay to fall and move forward. And I think with reaching men, the idea is just how can we think out of the box using the different concepts that have been shared today, and experiment, try it. I mean, with the putting the games out in front of the mobile unit, or something at the health department. What can be done at the health department in a practical way that just makes it a little more easier for the men to engage. So thank you for sharing. Our future training, our next training will be in September 14th on maternal health and infant health outcomes. So thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you at next video conference training.
Thank you, Ira.